The first thing my mother did after asking me to sign away my $1.2 million house was tell 25 relatives I had already thrown her out of it. The second thing she did was send a photograph of 2 suitcases sitting on my front walk. There was only one problem. The suitcases had been placed there before I ever came home. I knew because at 6:18 that evening, while my mother was still standing across from me in my kitchen with a prepared deed and my favorite fountain pen, I saw the same photograph open in the camera roll on her phone. And beside it was a message she had already written. My own daughter is evicting me after everything I sacrificed to give her that house. I read it twice. Then I looked at the deed. My name was typed under grantor. My mother's name was typed under grantee. A yellow sticky note pointed to the signature line, "Sign here." My mother folded her hands on my kitchen island and said very calmly, "Don't make this ugly, Mara." I should have been angry. Instead, I felt something colder. Because anger says somebody crossed a line. What I felt was the realization that the line had been measured in advance. The papers were ready. The family message was ready. The photograph was ready. The only thing my mother had not prepared for was me refusing to play the part she had written for me. She smiled when I looked up. "You know what this is really about," she said. "No," I said. "I think I'm finally figuring out what it's about." She stopped smiling. That was at 6:18 p.m. By 7:03, 25 relatives believed I was evicting my mother. By 8:11, they were demanding explanations. By 9:26, my mother was telling people she had helped make my home possible. And at 10:14, I dropped one photograph into the family group chat. No caption, no explanation, just one photograph. 25 relatives cut her off before midnight. But the part my mother should have feared wasn't them. It was the 4-word message Grandma Ruth sent me at 12:17 a.m. I know that notebook. I didn't understand what she meant, not yet. By sunrise I would. And when Grandma finished what she started, my mother would discover that the worst person to manipulate in a family is the one who has been quietly keeping the receipts for 22 years. My name is Mara Ellison. I was 37 when this happened, and I restored old buildings for a living. I liked old structures because they eventually told the truth. Paint could hide rot, furniture could hide cracks. A beautiful facade could distract people for years. But weight always found the weak point. My house was a 4-bedroom brick colonial outside Richmond, Virginia, with an original oak staircase, a slate roof, and a detached carriage house that had been converted into a guest suite. I bought it for $638,000 after 11 years of saving. It needed plumbing, electrical work, foundation reinforcement, roof repairs, and more patience than I knew I had. Over time, I invested almost $400,000 restoring it properly. When the neighborhood changed, and renovated homes began crossing 7 figures, mine appraised at just over $1.2 million. That number changed something in my mother. Elaine Ellison was 62, elegant, funny, and extremely good at being needed. She remembered birthdays. She brought soup when people were sick. She wrote thank you notes by hand. At family gatherings, she always knew who needed a chair, a plate, or a private conversation. I loved her, that matters, because she was not secretly terrible every day of my childhood. She could be wonderfully generous. She could also turn generosity into an invoice. If Mom helped someone, she usually refused thanks. Family helps family, she would say. Months or years later, if that person disappointed her, the favor returned. Interesting. I didn't think twice when you needed me. My sister Nora and I called it the museum tour. When Mom felt unappreciated, she walked us past exhibits of everything she had ever done. The flu she stayed awake through, the school trips she drove, the clothes she bought, the sacrifices she made. She rarely said, "You owe me." She didn't need to. I thought that was simply how families worked. Then Mom sold her condo. She cleared a little over $400,000 and asked to stay in my guest house for 6 weeks, while she decided where to live next. I said yes. 6 weeks became 3 months. 3 became 9. At a year, I still charged her no rent. I paid the property utilities, replaced the guest house heat pump when it failed, and bought a refrigerator when the old one stopped cooling. She bought groceries sometimes, watered my plants when I traveled, and made Sunday lunch. It was not a terrible arrangement. But when I asked what her long-term plan was, she stared into her iced tea and said, "After all the years I gave you, I didn't realize a few months would be counted." I apologized. That was my first mistake, not letting her stay, apologizing for asking when temporary would end. The question started after she saw my updated property assessment. Is the house really worth around 1.2? Approximately. Do you still have a mortgage? Yes. How much equity? Mom, she laughed. We're family. A few weeks later she asked whether my house was in a trust, then whether adding a family member to a deed was complicated, then what happened to the house if something happened to me. Each question seemed harmless alone. Together they made a line I did not recognize until Nora called. Can I ask you something weird? I'm excellent with weird. Mom told Aunt Denise she helped you buy the house. I stopped walking. She did not. I know, but Denise thinks Mom has equity. I called Mom. Did you tell Denise you helped me buy my house? A tiny pause. Then a laugh. I said I helped you become the woman who could buy that house. That is not what Denise heard. Well, Denise hears what she wants. Nora heard it from Denise. Mom sighed. Mara, do you really want to interrogate me over wording? If you're telling people you have money in my property, yes. I have money in you. I went quiet. Music lessons, school clothes, college visits, medical bills. Do you think children raise themselves? That isn't what I asked. No, you asked a question built on the assumption that everything you have appeared out of thin air. Before hanging up, she said one more thing. Don't erase the people who made you possible. I stood in my attic staring at my phone. Something was wrong. I knew it. But I still told myself there had to be an explanation. That was the last one I gave her. I remember the date because I had spent the day in Baltimore for a preservation review and drove home through miserable traffic. I pulled into my driveway at 6:11 p.m. Mom's car was parked behind the guest house. The porch light was on. 2 suitcases were standing near the front steps. I noticed them. I assumed she was going somewhere. That assumption lasted 7 minutes. When I walked into my kitchen, Mom was sitting at the island. She had arranged the room like a meeting. Blue folder, 2 glasses of water, my fountain pen. Her phone beside her right hand. Good, she said. You're home. I live here. Sit down. I've been sitting for 2 hours. Mara, that tone. I put my laptop bag on a chair. What is this? She touched the folder. I want you to hear me before you react. That sentence usually means I'm going to react. Please. I opened the folder. The first page looked familiar. Not because I had seen that specific document. Because I had seen enough property records in my career to recognize a deed. I read the names. Mine. Hers. I read them again. What is this? A practical solution. To what? To the imbalance. That word, I remember it exactly. What imbalance? She folded her hands. You have a property worth more than $1 million. Yes, I'm approaching retirement without permanent housing. You have $400,000 from your condo. Not anymore. I stared at her. What does that mean? She looked away, just for a second, then back. We'll get to that. No, we'll get to it now. Mara, stop turning this into a business meeting. You put a deed in front of me, because I need security. I lifted the page. This transfers my house to you. It creates options. It transfers ownership. You would still live here. I laughed once. You're offering to let me live in my own house? Don't be dramatic. I'm reading the document. You always hide behind technical language when you don't want to deal with emotion. The technical language is the part where I stop owning my house. She leaned back. You think I want to hurt you? I don't know what you want. I want fairness. Explain fairness. Her eyes filled instantly. Not slowly. Instantly. My mother could cry with remarkable precision. I gave you the best years of my life. I said nothing. I stayed in a marriage longer than I should have because you girls needed stability. My parents divorced when I was 21. I worked when I was exhausted. Still nothing. I took you to appointments, competitions, school. I paid for clothes, food, lessons, college. I sacrificed vacations. I sacrificed retirement savings. I heard the word. Paid. College. It passed through me and kept going. At the time, I had no reason to question it. You are describing parenting. Her face went rigid. That is unbelievably cruel. No. I'm saying raising your child does not create a claim on their future property. You really think you did this alone? No. I think many people helped me. Who? Teachers, Dad, Grandma, mentors, you. Her expression changed when I said Grandma. One flicker. Fear. I almost missed it. You think my mother did more for you than I did? That isn't what I said. You always worship her. I don't worship anybody. She gives you a check and suddenly she's the saint. What check? Forget it. No, what check? She pushed the deed toward me. Sign it. I stared at her. No, you haven't thought. I don't need to think. At least read the rest. No, you don't understand. I understand the ownership clause. I am your mother. That is not a legal category of co-owner. Her palm hit the counter. Not hard. Enough. Stop talking to me like one of your contractors. Then stop handing me legal documents. Her eyes narrowed. I knew you would do this. Do what? Humiliate me? In my kitchen? Treat everything I've done as though it has no value. Mom, if you need money, ask me for money. I don't want charity. Then what do you call this? Repayment. The word sat between us. Repayment for what? My sacrifices. There it was, not implied, not hidden, the invisible invoice finally printed. I looked down at the deed, then at her. My life is not an account payable. She stood so quickly her stool rolled backward. You selfish little... She stopped. My mother hated ugly language, not because she never felt it, because she never wanted witnesses to it. She reached for her phone. That was when I saw the screen. The family group chat icon was open. A draft message filled the display. My own daughter is evicting me after everything I sacrificed to give her that house. Below the draft was a photograph. 2 suitcases on my front walk, the same suitcases I had passed at 6-11. I looked toward the front windows, then back at her phone. My chest went quiet. Not my heart. Everything around it. Why is that already written? Her face changed, only for a moment. Then she locked the phone. What? You already wrote that I'm evicting you. I was upset. Before I refused, you were always going to refuse. And the suitcases? She said nothing. You put them outside before I got home. Mara. You photographed them. This is not about luggage. No, it's about the fact that you planned the accusation before the conversation. You're twisting this. How? I know you. That sentence. Soft. Certain. Because I know you. I looked at the folder, the water, the pen, the prepared message, the staged photograph. For years I had thought my mother's guilt came from emotion, spontaneous disappointment, pain, fear. Standing in that kitchen, I realized something much worse. At least this time it was strategy. She had planned the pressure. Family first, facts later. I reached for the deed. She pulled it toward herself. What are you doing? Who prepared this? A professional. Name. Why? Because I'm going to have my attorney review it. You have an attorney now? For this, yes. She shoved the folder into her purse. So that's your answer? Yes. You're refusing to help your own mother. I'm refusing to give you my house. You won't even discuss compromise. You didn't bring a compromise, you brought a transfer. Her eyes went flat. Then she said, if you make me leave, people deserve to know who you are. I haven't asked you to leave. She lifted her purse. You will. She walked out. I stood alone in my kitchen. Then my phone vibrated. Uncle Raymond. Mara, what is going on? My mother had pressed send. The next 7 minutes were the fastest I had ever watched a lie acquire witnesses. Aunt Denise, please tell me Elaine misunderstood. Cousin Ben, call me. My father's sister, who had not willingly spoken to Mom in 8 years. Are you really making your mother homeless before Thanksgiving? Then Nora called. I declined because I was still reading. 29 people were in the main Ellison family chat. Mom's message was longer than the draft I had seen. I never thought I would have to write this. After a lifetime of putting my children first, Mara informed me tonight that I am no longer welcome in the home I helped make possible. I have been given almost no time to figure out where I will live. I am heartbroken, embarrassed, and honestly scared. Please do not attack her. I am only telling you because I may need somewhere to stay while I rebuild. Then the photograph. 2 suitcases outside my front door. The comment beneath it came from Aunt Denise. Oh, Elaine. That hurt more than I expected. Not because Denise believed her, because Mom knew exactly what that photograph would do. It turned a disagreement about ownership into a picture people could understand in half a second. Older mother. Suitcases. Cold porch. Cruel daughter. The story more... My hands shook, but my brain was oddly clear. I typed. Mom has not been evicted. I have not asked her to leave. 3 dots appeared beneath Raymond's name, then disappeared. Mom answered first. Mara, please, we don't need to humiliate each other publicly. I stared at the sentence. She had started a public accusation and was now asking me not to make it public. Aunt Denise. Then why are your bags outside? Me. Ask Mom when she put them there, Mom. I am not doing this. Uncle Raymond. Mara, whatever the technical details are, she is your mother. Technical details. That phrase did something to me. In my profession, technical details are often the things keeping ceilings from falling on people. I typed. She asked me tonight to transfer full ownership of my house to her. I refused. Nothing happened for 6 seconds. Then everything happened. Ben, wait. Full ownership? Nora, what? Denise. Elaine? Mom. That is a gross distortion of a private family discussion. Me. The deed lists me as grantor and you as grantee. Mom, that was an opening proposal. Me. It was prepared for signature. Mom. Because I was trying to protect myself. Raymond. Can everyone stop typing and call each other? Ben. No, I'd actually like to understand the deed part. Mom, there is no deed part. Mara is weaponizing legal language to avoid acknowledging my contribution. Me. What contribution to the purchase price, Mom? I am not doing a financial autopsy of motherhood in a group chat. The phrase was good. That was another thing about my mother. She was good with words. She knew how to make a factual question sound vulgar. A financial autopsy of motherhood. I could almost hear relatives reading it and thinking, she has a point. Then Nora sent, Mom, did you contribute money to the house purchase or not? No answer. Nora, yes or no? Mom, Nora, stay out of this. You know how much I did for both of you. That sentence stopped me. Stay out of this. Not because it was unusual. Because I had seen something similar recently. Where? I looked toward the guest house through the kitchen window. Mom's lights were off. Her car was gone. I walked outside. The suitcases were gone from the front walk. I crossed the yard and tried the guest house door. Unlocked. Mom? Nothing. I stepped inside. The downstairs lamp was on. Her purse was gone. Her coat was gone. The suitcases were upstairs. Back in her closet. I took a photograph. For 1 second, I considered posting it, proof that the eviction scene had been staged. But then I noticed the red notebook on her desk. Cheap spiral binding. I knew that notebook. Mom carried it everywhere. Restaurants, family gatherings, doctor appointments, Christmas. She was always writing in it. I had assumed it was a calendar, maybe a budget book. It was closed. It was private. And I knew I should leave it that way. I wish I could tell you I did. I didn't. I opened it. The first few pages were ordinary. Appointments, birthdays, a grocery list. Then a divider made from a folded sticky note. Behind it was a page with my name written in capital letters. Mara. Underneath were short entries. College, remind 4 years. Dad absent. Stayed after breakup. Architect exams, meals. Hospital when 19. Then, guest house equal to temporary leverage. I stopped. Read it again. Temporary leverage. Below that, house est, 1.2. Ask deed first. Fallback 50% if refusal, housing insecurity. Family pressure before legal. My mouth went dry. Then came 3 more lines. Raymond, loyalty. Denise, guilt. Nora, stay neutral. And beneath them, underlined twice. Grandma, do not involve. I sat down. The chat on my phone kept vibrating in my hand. I didn't look at it. I turned the page. Uncle Raymond. Business loan 2009. Hospital visits. Sensitive Eric divorce. 14,000. Paid. Aunt Denise. Stayed after surgery. Mom conflict. Christmas 2017. 8,000. Paid. Ben. Realtor referrals. Wedding gift. Needs family approval. Nora. Childcare. Ava pickups. Use after all I did when Ava born. My skin prickled. Page after page. Names, favors, private insecurities, old grief, amounts. Some with check marks. Some marked paid, some with dates. It was not a diary. It was not therapy. It looked like a CRM system for emotional debt. A customer database. Except the customers were us. Then I reached a page dated October 2003. At the top, house plan. 1. Establish contribution narrative. 2. Confirm valuation. 3. Transfer ownership. 4. Refinance after seasoning period. 5. Purchase Ridge Haven. 6. Repay K. At the bottom, 1 sentence. Mara will resist initially. Do not argue facts. Make refusal socially expensive. I read it once, twice. A third time. Make refusal socially expensive. I felt something inside me rearrange. For 37 years my greatest fear in family conflict had been being seen as selfish. My mother knew that. She hadn't merely used guilt. She had designed around the exact place guilt entered me. The staged suitcases were not anger. The family message was not panic. They were step 6 in a process she had written down. I took out my phone. I framed one photograph carefully. Left page, several relatives' names and personal pressure points. Right page, house plan. Center, make refusal socially expensive. I went back downstairs. The family chat had 104 unread messages. I did not read them. I uploaded the photograph. No caption, no defense, no explanation. Just the notebook. Then I waited. For 23 seconds nobody wrote a word. At 24 seconds, Ben. What is this? At 27, Denise, Elaine. At 31, Nora. Oh my God. Then Raymond. Why does it say $14,000 paid beside my name, Melanie, my cousin? Why does it say miscarriage equal to loyalty next to me? My stomach dropped. I zoomed in. I had missed that. Mom entered the chat. Mara had no right to photograph my private journal. Nobody answered that. Then, those are personal therapy notes taken wildly out of context. Melanie responded first. Why is the worst year of my life under a heading called leverage? Mom, that is not what that means. Ben, then what does needs family approval mean under my name? Raymond and the $14,000 Denise. Elaine, answer the question. Mom left the chat. The social collapse was immediate, not theatrical, administrative. Uncle Raymond removed her from the Thanksgiving planning chat. Aunt Denise blocked her. Ben canceled a property appointment he had agreed to help her with. Melanie wrote, "Do not contact me." My cousin Jason removed her from the private group where we shared family photos. Nora texted me separately. "I'm done, I mean it." One by one, 25 relatives either blocked Mom, removed her from smaller chats, canceled plans, or told her they wanted no contact until she explained the notebook honestly. I had expected the photograph to prove she lied about me. Instead, everyone found themselves in it. That was why it worked. The photograph did not ask them to choose my side. It showed them they had each been assigned a function in hers. At 11:52 p.m. I finally called Nora. She answered crying. "What does Ava pickups mean?" "I don't know." "She watched Ava 3 nights after I had the baby. I thanked her 100 times." "I know." She wrote it down. "I know." "What does paid mean?" "I don't know." A message appeared while we were talking. Grandma Ruth. She had been silent all evening. 4 words. "I know that notebook." I stopped listening to Nora for half a second. What? What? Grandma just messaged me. What did she say? I read it. Nora went quiet. Then she whispered, "Mara? Yeah? Why did Mom write 'do not involve' next to Grandma?" I looked at the red notebook on my kitchen island. "I think we're about to find out." Grandma Ruth was 84 and had worked 37 years in payroll and accounting for a manufacturing company. She was 5 feet 2 inches tall and had never once in my memory been impressed by volume. When men shouted at customer service counters, Grandma became quieter. When relatives exaggerated numbers, she reached for a pen. When someone said, "It's basically the same thing," she asked exactly how it differed. She believed vagueness was where bad decisions went to hide. I called her at 12:19 a.m. She answered immediately. "Where is your mother?" "I don't know." "Good. What did you mean you know the notebook?" "Not over the phone." "Grandma, it's after midnight." "I'm aware. Can I come to you?" "No, I'm coming there. You shouldn't drive this late. I passed my eye test last month." "That wasn't—" "Make coffee." She hung up. 41 minutes later, headlights crossed my front room. Grandma walked in wearing a tan wool coat and carrying a brown accordion folder thick enough to stop a door. She put it on my dining table. "Notebook." I handed it to her. She did not open it. "Coffee first." I poured 2 cups. She drank hers black. Then she opened the accordion folder. Inside were copies of checks, bank statements, letters, tuition bills, handwritten notes, and old envelopes. Some were yellowed at the folds. "What is all this?" Grandma looked at me. "Your mother's sacrifices." She slid a photocopied check across the table. August 22, 2004. Payable to my university. $8,400. Signed Ruth Ellison. The next check. $7,950. Then $8,125. Then $8,700. I stared at the signatures. What am I looking at? Your tuition. No, Mom paid my tuition. Grandma's expression did not change. No, she told me she did. I know. I laughed once because the alternative was crying. No, Grandma. She has reminded me for years. I know. She said she delayed retirement because of college. I know. Then why are your checks here? Grandma placed both hands around her coffee. When your grandfather died, he left education accounts for you and Nora. I remember there being some money. Your mother administered it, okay? She told me the investments performed badly and the balances were insufficient. I looked down at the checks. So you covered the difference? I covered tuition because I believed there was very little left. What happened to the education money? Grandma reached into the folder, another statement. She turned it toward me. Transfers, several. Receiving account. Elaine Ellison, my mother. I felt the first real fear of the night, not shock, fear. How much? Between your account and Nora's, just over $63,000 moved out over several years. Why? She said some went toward legitimate expenses connected to raising you. Did it? Some may have. That isn't an answer. It is the only answer I can prove. That was Grandma. Even angry, she would not turn suspicion into fact. She told me she paid. Yes. She told relatives too. Yes. You knew she lied? I knew the story changed. Grandma looked older suddenly, not weaker, older. I confronted her years later. She cried. She said she was ashamed. She said your father had left her with expenses, and she had borrowed against the accounts intending to replace the money. Did she? Not fully. Why didn't you tell us? Grandma looked at the table. Because I thought protecting her dignity protected you. The room went quiet. Then she added, I was wrong. She pulled out another check. $18,000. What is that? Your first apartment after graduate school? No, yes. Mom told me she sold Grandma Helen's bracelet to help me with the deposit. Grandma took a sip of coffee. She still has the bracelet. That was so perfectly absurd that I laughed. A real laugh. One sharp burst. Then I covered my mouth. Grandma almost smiled. Your mother has always preferred a memorable story. She reached deeper into the folder. A receipt from a moving company. A check for my first professional exam fee. A medical bill from when I was 19. Different payers. Dad, Grandma, insurance, me. Things Mom had later narrated as her sacrifices. I started keeping copies, Grandma said, because the stories stopped matching the numbers. How long? 22 years. I stared at her. You have been keeping receipts for 22 years? I worked in payroll, Mara. We keep receipts when people begin using feelings as arithmetic. Then she opened the red notebook. She turned pages slowly. When she reached Raymond's page, her finger stopped. 14,000. You know what it is? I may. She flipped to Denise. 8,000. Then Ben. Another amount. Then Jason. Another. Grandma took out her phone and opened the calculator. 14,000. 8,000. 5,500. 3,200. 12,000. 4,750. 6,700. 9,300. More. When she finished, the total was 96,000, 4,050. What are those? I don't know yet. You said you may know. I know a pattern. I do not know the facts. She turned to house plan. Her eyes stopped at Ridgehaven. Well, what? Ridgehaven. Do you know it? Retirement community. She told me to open my laptop. I searched. Ridgehaven at Glenmere, private senior community, detached cottages, dining, fitness center, gardens, starting prices around $690,000. Grandma leaned closer. Your mother toured it last summer. How do you know? She asked me to go. Did you? Yes. What did she say? That she loved Cottage 14. I clicked the site map. Cottage 14 was one of the larger units. Base price, $735,000. My mouth went dry. Could she afford that? Not with what I believed she had. I looked at the notebook again. Transfer ownership, refinance, purchase Ridgehaven, repay K. What is K? I don't know. The phone rang. Unknown number, 2:17 a.m. Grandma looked at the screen. Answer. I did. Hello? A man said, Is this Mara Ellison? Yes. My name is Kenneth Vale. Your mother gave me this number. She said you could confirm the property transfer. Grandma and I looked at each other. I put the call on speaker. What property transfer? There was a pause. The Richmond house. There is no transfer. A longer pause. I see. Mr. Vale, what exactly did my mother tell you? He exhaled. I think perhaps we need to start at the beginning. And for the next 11 minutes, a stranger explained why my mother had needed my signature before December 1st. Kenneth Vale was 68, a retired dentist, and a widower my mother knew through a travel club. 18 months earlier, Mom had told him she wanted to reserve a cottage at Ridgehaven, but had money temporarily tied up in our Richmond property. Our, not mine. She said she co-owned the house with me informally, and that formal title changes were part of ongoing estate planning. Kenneth had money sitting in conservative investments. Mom asked for a short-term bridge loan, $165,000. There was paperwork, a promissory note, interest, a repayment date. December 1st, 17 days away. What collateral did she offer? I asked. She did not pledge the house formally. Then why did you lend her that much? Another pause. She sent me supporting information. What information? An appraisal summary, property records, photographs, emails describing the planned transfer. My stomach turned. My appraisal summary was not public. I kept it in a file cabinet in my home office. Mom had an emergency key. Did the appraisal have my name on it? Yes. Did I ever communicate with you? No. Did I ever sign anything? No. Then why did you believe I had agreed? He was quiet. Because Elaine said the paperwork was a family formality. She said you were fully aware. Grandma closed her eyes. Kenneth continued. I now understand that I made assumptions I should not have made. What happened tonight? She told me there had been a temporary delay because you were upset about the tax implications. She said I could call you if I needed reassurance. So under pressure, my mother had handed me to the lender as a human reference. She was still assuming I would protect her, even after I refused the deed. I asked, how much does she owe you now? With accrued interest, slightly more than the original principal. Did she tell you what she used the money for? Ridgehaven deposit and what she called family obligations. Grandma opened the calculator again. How much was the Ridgehaven deposit? She asked. Kenneth answered, $70,000. Grandma wrote it down. How much went elsewhere? I don't know. Kenneth paused. Ms. Ellison, I'm sorry. So am I. I think we both need counsel. Yes. When the call ended, Grandma looked at the clock. 2:29 a.m., then at the notebook. $96,450, beside family names. $165,000 Kenneth loan. $70,000 Ridgehaven deposit. A house worth $1.2 million that Mom expected to own by signature. Grandma closed the notebook. Your mother did not wake up this morning and make a bad decision. No, she built a system. I sat back. What do we do? Grandma looked almost offended by the question. We audit it. At 8:04 the next morning, Mom texted, You have created a devastating misunderstanding. Then, Kenneth had no business calling you. Then, your grandmother will turn this into something it is not. That line caught me. Not the family, Grandma. I still did not answer. At 10, I called a locksmith. By noon, every exterior lock on my house and guest house had been changed. I sent Mom written notice that she could collect anything she needed and that the free housing arrangement would end in 30 days. She replied, So you are evicting me? I answered once. Yesterday you told 25 relatives I had already evicted you. Today I am ending a free housing arrangement because I learned you planned to take ownership of my home and represented to a lender that I had agreed. Those are different events, she wrote. You sound like a lawyer at 1 to 26 p.m. Grandma created a new family chat called Numbers, 27 people, Mom included. Grandma's first message, Elaine, what did the dollar amounts beside these names represent? She attached the notebook photograph. Mom, I am not participating in a public interrogation. Grandma, that was not my question. Then Grandma asked Uncle Raymond directly. Did you give Elaine $14,000? Yes. Why? Raymond answered. She said Mara's graduate school debt had become urgent. She said she had covered it years ago and needed help replacing retirement money. I had never had urgent graduate school debt. Grandma moved to Aunt Denise $8,000. Denise said Mom had claimed she drained her emergency fund paying my undergraduate tuition. Then Ben 12,000. Mom had told him she contributed to my house down payment. Ben wrote, "You said, I put 12 into the down payment and never asked for a dime back. I remember because I offered to help document the gift. That one hurt. Not because it was bigger, because it was specific." Grandma kept going. Amount, reason, date. The notebook came alive one line at a time. The numbers were money relatives had given Mom after she described sacrifices she supposedly made for me or Nora. The lies worked, because each one contained something true. She had driven me to college visits. She had cared for me when I was sick. She had helped Nora after Ava was born. Real kindness became camouflage for invented financial sacrifice. By late afternoon, the verified total was $81,900. That evening, $94,300. By the next morning, $118,750. Grandma refused to count anything uncertain. Gifts did not count. Honest loans did not count. Vague memories did not count. That precision made the result harder to dismiss. Mom finally wrote, "I never forced anyone to give me money." Grandma answered, "No. You gave them false information and let their love do the forcing." Then Mom wrote, "Everyone is acting as though Mara created herself. I carried her. I paid, I sacrificed. Nobody reimbursed me for motherhood." Grandma posted photographs of my tuition checks, the apartment check, and the education account transfers. Then she typed, "I did." Mom disappeared from the chat. 5 minutes later, Grandma called me. "I need Susan." "Who?" "My attorney." "Why?" "Because your mother thinks this is a family argument." Grandma's voice was very calm. "It is not." The group chat had exposed the system. Grandma was about to put consequences behind it. 3 days later, I was sitting in a conference room at Susan Patel's law office. Nora sat beside me. Uncle Raymond and Aunt Denise were across the table. Grandma was at the head. My mother had not arrived. The room smelled faintly of eucalyptus and printer paper. On the table were 3 stacks of documents. Susan Patel was 50-something, silver-streaked hair, dark green glasses, and the expression of someone who had spent a career watching families underestimate paperwork. At 9:11 a.m., Mom walked in. 11 minutes late, navy dress, pearl earrings, perfect hair. She looked around the room. "Is this necessary?" Grandma said. "Sit down, Mother, sit." Mom sat. Susan closed the door. Grandma began. "I owe everyone here an apology." Mom's face shifted. She had expected an attack. Grandma continued. "For years I knew Elaine had financial problems. I knew some of her explanations changed. I knew she borrowed from family. I did not understand the full pattern." Mom crossed her arms. Grandma looked at her daughter. "I repeatedly protected Elaine's reputation because I believed public consequences would destroy her." "Thank you," Mom said bitterly. Grandma did not look away. "I understand now that private rescue enabled public damage." Mom's jaw tightened. Grandma opened the brown accordion folder. "I have made several changes." Mom turned toward Susan. "To what?" "My estate." There it was, real fear. The first unmistakable fear I had seen on Mom's face since the kitchen. "You changed your will?" "My trust." "Because Mara took a photograph of my notebook?" "No." "Then why?" "Because the notebook confirmed a financial pattern I should have addressed years ago." Mom looked at me. "You did this." I shook my head. I did not know this meeting was about Grandma's trust. "You expect me to believe that?" Grandma tapped the table once. "She is telling the truth." Mom turned back. Grandma held up one finger. "First, your financial power of attorney for me is revoked." Mom blinked. "I manage your bills." "Not anymore." "I have managed them for 7 years." "Yes. I have never taken 1 cent from you." "I did not say you did." "Then why?" "Because someone who misrepresents finances to family members does not retain authority over mine." Mom inhaled sharply. Grandma held up a second finger. "Second, you are removed as successor trustee and executor." The color left Mom's face. "You cannot be serious." "I am." "Who replaces me?" "Susan's firm will coordinate with an independent fiduciary, an outsider, a professional." "You would rather pay a stranger than trust your own daughter?" Grandma paused. "Yes." One word. No anger. That was worse. Mom looked around the room. No one moved. Then Grandma held up a third finger. "This is the part you will dislike." Mom almost laughed. "I think we passed that." Grandma slid a spreadsheet across the table, rows, names, amounts, dates, reasons, verified documentation. At the bottom, $126,450. The number had increased after 2 more relatives provided records. "What is this?" Mom asked. "Money family members gave you based on claims we can document as false or materially misleading." Mom pushed the sheet back. "This is ridiculous." Grandma pushed it forward again. "No. You cannot just decide what people meant 20 years ago." "We did not," Susan spoke for the first time. "Only payments supported by contemporaneous messages, checks, emails, or clear, consistent testimony were included." Mom looked at her. "Who asked you?" "Your mother." Mom turned to Grandma. "What are you doing?" Grandma folded her hands. "I amended my estate plan." Silence. "For every verified dollar a relative gave you because of one of these false claims, an equal amount will be deducted from your share of my estate and redirected to that relative." Mom stared. Nobody breathed. Grandma continued. "Raymond gave you $14,000 after you falsely represented that you had covered Mara's graduate school debt. $14,000 of what would have been your inheritance is redirected to Raymond." Raymond looked down. "Denise gave $8,000 based on the tuition story. $8,000 is redirected to Denise." Denise covered her mouth. "Ben gave $12,000 after you claimed you contributed to Mara's down payment. $12,000 is redirected to Ben." Mom looked at Susan again. "Possibly be legal." Susan's voice stayed neutral. "Your mother may revise the disposition of her assets while competent, subject to the terms and applicable law. These changes have been documented and executed." Mom stood. Grandma said, "I'm not finished." "I am. Sit down." For 1 second I thought Mom would leave. Then she sat. Grandma continued. "The remaining share designated for you will not pass to you outright." Mom's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "It will be held in trust." "For what? For you. I'm not a child." "No." "Then why would my money be held?" Grandma's gaze did not move. "Because I no longer trust you with unrestricted access to a large principal." Mom's face flushed. "You are humiliating me." Grandma said nothing. Susan explained that after Grandma's death, whatever portion remained for Mom would be placed in a spendthrift-style trust administered independently, with scheduled distributions and provisions for legitimate housing, health, and living expenses. Mom would benefit from it. She would not control the principal. Mom stared at Grandma. "You're putting me on an allowance?" "I am ensuring the money supports you without becoming another source of leverage, loans, or stories." "You think I'm some kind of criminal?" "No." Grandma reached for the red notebook. "I think you are my daughter." She set it beside the spreadsheet. "And I think love has made me financially careless with you." Mom's eyes filled. "After everything I did for this family." There it was again, the phrase, the mechanism. Grandma looked at her for a long time. Then she said, "You used future family loyalty as a bank." She tapped the spreadsheet. "So I converted your future inheritance into refunds." Silence. Absolute silence. Mom's lips parted, no sound came. Grandma was not finished. She reached into the accordion folder and took out an old page I had never seen, a handwritten loan ledger. Mom looked at it and froze. Grandma said, "Do you remember this?" Mom's face told me she did. "What is it?" I asked. Grandma looked at me. 1998 through 2014. Money I loaned your mother." Mom whispered, "Mother. $79,000 total, most repaid, some forgiven." Grandma turned the sheet around. Beside several entries were notes: school expense, medical emergency, mortgage, car repair. Grandma pointed to one. "Every time Elaine asked, I wrote what she told me the money was for." She pointed to another column. "Years later, when explanations changed, I wrote that too." Mom's tears spilled. "This is cruel." Grandma's voice softened. "No, Elaine." She placed the old ledger beside the red notebook. "You spent 30 years telling people you did not keep score." She touched the red notebook. "You kept score." Then the old ledger. "I kept receipts." Nobody moved. I felt tears in my eyes. Not triumph. Relief. The kind that comes when a lifelong confusion finally receives the correct name. Mom had taught us that love and debt were the same substance in different containers. Grandma had separated them on a conference table. Love, debt, one could exist without the other, it always could. Mom stood again. This time Grandma did not stop her. She picked up her handbag, looked at each of us, then said, "I hope you remember this when I'm gone." Grandma answered immediately, "We are trying to remember accurately now." Mom walked out. The door closed behind her. For the first time in my life, nobody followed. That was the real consequence. Not the money, not the trust, not the blocked chats. No one followed her. There had always been someone. Dad when they were married, Nora, me, Raymond, Denise. Someone would find Mom in a bedroom, a parking lot, a porch, a kitchen. Someone would soften, someone would say, "Come on, Elaine." Someone would apologize first because the silence was unbearable. That morning, 26 years of family choreography ended with a closed conference room door. Grandma looked at it for a long time, then she took off her glasses. Her hands were shaking. That was when I understood something else. Merciless did not mean painless. Grandma had not enjoyed any of it. She had simply decided pain was no longer a reason to avoid consequences. And we were about to find out whether my mother could survive a family that stopped rescuing her. She did survive, but for a while survival looked nothing like winning. Kenneth hired an attorney. Mom did too. I wanted every boundary around my house to exist on paper, not merely in family memory. The first thing my attorney confirmed was the only thing I truly needed to hear. My house was safe. No deed had transferred. No lien had been placed in Kenneth's favor. Mom had no ownership interest and no authority to represent that she did. Still, for almost 2 months, I woke before 6, made coffee, and checked the county property database. Parcel number. Owner, Mara Ellison. Every morning, there I was, still mine. That is what fear can look like after the crisis ends. Not screaming. Refreshing a government website while the coffee brews. The financial cleanup was less comforting. Mom had paid $70,000 to reserve Cottage 14 at Ridgehaven. Another portion of Kenneth's money had paid credit cards and earlier private loans. Some had gone to ordinary expenses. Kenneth and Mom eventually negotiated repayment after she sold investments and abandoned the Ridgehaven plan. There was no dramatic arrest, no television courtroom, just letters, lawyers, numbers, and consequences. Honestly, that felt more real. 11 days after Grandma's meeting, Mom moved out of my guest house. Nora was present while the movers came. I stayed at work. When I returned, the little house felt enormous. Her framed prints were gone. Her tea tins were gone. The lavender soap was gone. On the kitchen counter sat one envelope. Inside was a single sentence. "I hope someday you understand the difference between legality and loyalty." Old Mara would have answered. I would have written pages proving I loved her, explaining that boundaries were not abandonment, apologizing for the pain caused by saying no to something I should never have been asked to give. Instead, I folded the letter and put it in the red toolbox Grandma had given me when I bought the house. Then I changed the sheets for 3 months. Mom and I did not speak. The rest of the family did not magically become whole either. Raymond was furious, then guilty for being furious. Denise apologized to me repeatedly for believing the tuition story. Ben, a real estate professional, was embarrassed that he had believed Mom's down payment claim. Nora struggled most with the notebook. Not because she had lost money, because ordinary acts of grandmotherly kindness had been cataloged beside her name. Ava pickup, 3 nights childcare, emergency school run. One night Nora called me crying. "I keep thinking about every time I thanked her." "You meant it." "I did." "Then your gratitude was real." What if she thought I owed more? I sat on my kitchen floor. Someone else's secret invoice does not become your debt. Neither of us spoke for a while. That sentence became the boundary underneath all the others. A favor could be real. Gratitude could be real. The secret invoice was the problem. Grandma understood that too, but what surprised me was how little satisfaction she took from winning. One Sunday I found her on my porch holding coffee with both hands. "I keep thinking about your mother when she was 6, she said. "Why?" "She brought injured birds home, made beds for them in shoeboxes." I smiled. "I can't picture Mom doing that." "She did." Grandma looked toward the yard. "She wasn't born with a red notebook." Then she told me that when Mom was 14, Grandpa lost his job. Money became tight. Grandma leaned heavily on her oldest daughter. "I praised her for being useful," Grandma said. "Maybe too much." She looked at me. "Maybe she learned that being useful was how you earned love. That doesn't excuse her." "No," Grandma nodded, "but if I insist on accurate accounting, I have to include myself." That was the moment I understood the deepest part of the story. My mother had turned sacrifice into currency, but she had not invented the language alone. Somewhere in our family, usefulness became proof of love. Then sacrifice became proof of usefulness. Then sacrifice became power. By the time it reached me, the lesson had hardened into one sentence: I suffered for you, therefore you owe me. Grandma's real punishment was not the inheritance amendment. It was refusing to pass that sentence to another generation. The final verified amount in her spreadsheet became $126,450. Not every dollar Mom had ever borrowed. Only amounts supported by records or clear evidence of a materially false story. Grandma kept the amendment. Dollar for dollar, those amounts would come out of Mom's eventual share and be redirected to the relatives who had been misled. The balance would remain in a professionally managed trust for Mom's benefit. When Mom learned the final number, she called Grandma. Nora happened to be visiting. Mom said, "You're punishing me from the grave." Grandma replied, "No, I'm refusing to reward you from it." Then both of them cried. They stayed on the phone for almost half an hour. That detail mattered to me. Merciless did not mean loveless. Grandma loved her daughter enough to stop rescuing her. Months later, Mom began therapy. I did not ask for details. Our contact returned carefully. Birthday messages, short calls, occasional lunches. No money discussions, no emergency key, no walking into my house. Trust was not restored. Access was reduced. That summer, I converted the guest house into a design studio. The bedroom became a materials library, and the sitting room became a place where I could sketch. For weeks, I kept finding traces of Mom: a tea stain inside a cabinet, a grocery list behind the refrigerator, lavender curtains she had chosen because she said the morning light looked softer through them. At first, I wanted to throw the curtains away. Everything in that little house felt contaminated by what had happened. Then I stood there holding the fabric and realized how exhausting it was to make every object testify. They were curtains, that was all. I washed them and hung them back up. A few days later, Grandma brought me a wooden box containing copies of the tuition checks and old records. "I don't want to spend my life keeping evidence against Mom," I said. "Good," Grandma answered. "Keep it only until you no longer need proof to trust your own memory." I put the box in the attic. I have not opened it since. The documents had done their job. They had not taught me to hate my mother. They had taught me to stop arguing with facts. Almost a year after the deed, Mom rang my doorbell. She stood on the porch holding my black fountain pen. "I found this in a box." The same pen she had placed beside the prepared deed. I took it. "Thanks." She stayed where she was. "I need to say something without asking you for anything afterward." I waited. "I used you." My throat tightened. "I don't mean only the house. I used your gratitude." I said nothing. I knew being called selfish would hurt you. I knew if the family believed I was homeless because of you, you would feel pressure to fix it. Her eyes filled. "I wrote the message before you came home because I thought if enough people were watching, you would sign something." There it was. No rewriting, no technicality, the truth. "I told myself I was protecting my future," she said, "but I was trying to take yours." For months I had imagined the speech I would give if she ever admitted it. In reality, I said, "Yes." She nodded. "I'm sorry. No but." No reminder of what she sacrificed. No request that I speak to Grandma. Just the apology. I believed she meant it. That did not erase what happened. An apology is not a time machine. It is information about who someone may be trying to become. "Thank you for saying it," I told her. "I don't expect you to trust me because I apologized." "Good," she almost smiled. "What happens now?" I looked at the fountain pen. "Now you become someone trustworthy." "How?" "Slowly." She nodded and left. For the first time, that pen had passed between us without anyone asking me to sign something. The next Christmas, Mom came to my house carrying a pie. She rang the bell. When I opened the door, she asked, "May I come in?" A tiny sentence, a huge difference. Not every relative came that year. Some relationships with Mom remained broken. Others were cautiously improving. I had stopped believing it was my responsibility to manage either outcome. At dessert, Raymond joked, "Careful what you say around Ruth. She'll put it in the file." The table went still. Mom looked at Grandma. Then Mom said, "She probably has the receipt for this pie." Grandma replied, "I do if you want reimbursement." Everyone laughed, real laughter. Even Mom. After they left, I stood alone in my kitchen. Grandma had forgotten her reading glasses. Mom had forgotten the pie server. ordinary evidence of ordinary people having been there. I walked to the island where the blue folder had once waited. For most of my life, I believed gratitude meant never making the person who helped you regret helping. Now I know better. Gratitude is not ownership, a favor is not a lien, parenthood is not an investment contract, and childhood is not a loan that becomes payable when your house reaches 7 figures. I restore old structures for a living. My job is to determine what is original, what was added later, and what is actually carrying the weight. Families are not so different. Sometimes the thing everyone calls tradition is just damage that has been passed down carefully enough to look structural. The house is still mine. Mom has her own apartment. Grandma still has her trust. Kenneth is being repaid, and the red notebook remains in Grandma's safe. Not because she plans to use it again. Because as she told me one Wednesday while sitting at my drafting table, forgiveness is allowed to have documentation. I laughed. Then I wrote it down, with my fountain pen. Please subscribe daily Reddit readings for new stories.